The words didn't sound real. They hung in the air of the familiar suburban kitchen, a kitchen where I'd eaten 1,000 peanut butter sandwiches, where I'd done my homework at this very table, where my daughter, Lily, now sat wide-eyed, clutching her sippy cup. They were the kind of words you heard in dramatic movies, shouted during storms, not spoken calmly over Tuesday morning coffee while sunlight streamed across the linoleum. I stared at my mother. Her face was serene, almost placid, as if she'd just announced we were out of orange juice, not that my 4-year-old and I were effectively homeless. My father stood behind her, a silent sentinel at the sink, methodically drying a plate and avoiding my eyes. My older brother, Mark, leaned against the refrigerator, arms crossed, his expression a mix of grim satisfaction and discomfort. What? The word finally clawed its way out of my throat, dry and cracked. You heard me, Chloe, my mom continued, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle on the gingham tablecloth. This arrangement isn't working for any of us anymore. The tension, the disruption, it's too much. We've discussed it, and we think it's best if you find somewhere else to go. Somewhere else to go. The phrase echoed in the hollow space that was suddenly my chest. I had somewhere else to go for 2 months after my divorce was finalized, after David emptied our joint account and left for Arizona with his assistant. My apartment lease was up, my credit was in tatters, and my job as a part-time library assistant didn't cover first and last month's rent on a new place. My parents had offered their finished basement, a temporary solution, they'd said, their voices dripping with martyred generosity, just until you get back on your feet. That was 5 months ago. The tension? I repeated, my voice gaining a little strength, fueled by a rising tide of disbelief. What tension? I cook, I clean, I buy my own groceries, I take care of Lily so she's not underfoot. I'm here less than I'm at work or looking for a second job. What disruption? My brother cleared his throat. It's the principle, Chloe. You're 32. You should be independent. Mom and Dad didn't sign up to raise another kid. I turned to him, heat flushing my face. Lily is not a kid they're raising. I am her mother. I do everything for her. But you're doing it under our roof, my father said quietly, finally placing the dried plate in the cupboard. And the roof is ours. We've decided. Decided? I pushed back from the table, the legs scraping a shriek against the floor. Lily flinched. Decided? You decided about my life, about my daughter's life, without talking to me? This is a family meeting, and I'm the topic, not a participant. Talking to you never leads to solutions, Chloe. My mom sighed, the sigh of the eternally put upon. You get emotional, you don't see the bigger picture. This is what's best for the family unit, for our peace. Our peace. The words were a slap. My presence, my struggle, was an assault on their peace. My failure was a noisy, inconvenient thing that messed up the quiet order of their retirement. Where are we supposed to go? I asked, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a cold, creeping terror. Today? You want us to leave today? My mother exchanged a glance with my father. We think by the end of the week would be reasonable. Mark can help you pack. I looked at my brother. His jaw was set. He was the successful one, the accountant with the pristine house in the next town over, the one who never asked for anything, the one who had voted me out. Lily, sensing the seismic shift in the room, slid off her chair and came to my side, burying her face in my leg. Mommy, why is Grandma mad? She's not mad, sweetheart, I lied, my vision blurring with tears I refused to shed in front of her. She's just busy. I drove on autopilot, not toward the preschool, but to the town park. I needed a neutral space, somewhere that didn't smell like betrayal. I parked and unbuckled Lily. Let's go swing for a little bit before school, okay? She nodded, her worry momentarily eclipsed by the promise of play. I took her hand and we walked to the empty playground. I pushed her on the swing, the repetitive motion calming the tremor in my hands, but doing nothing for the storm in my head. End of the week, 4 days. I had 4 days to perform a miracle. I mentally scrolled through my contacts. Friends? Most had drifted away during the isolating years of my failing marriage, and the ones who remained lived in small apartments or had roommates. I couldn't show up with a child. My coworker, Sarah? We were friendly, but not move-in friendly. David? A bitter laugh caught in my throat. He was 1,000 miles away, and his child support payments were as reliable as a coin flip. The crushing weight of it all settled on my shoulders. I was alone. Truly, utterly alone. The safety net I had taken for granted, flawed, judgmental, but there, had just been yanked away. I had 4 days. I started the car and drove to the public library, not to seek solace in books, but to use their computers and Wi-Fi. I was a library assistant. I knew how to research. If my family wanted me to be a problem for the system, then by God, I would learn the system. I spent hours there. I applied for every emergency housing voucher, every rental assistance program in the county. I filled out forms for Section 8 waiting lists, knowing they were years long. I researched shelters, reading reviews and horror stories with a sinking heart. I looked up extended stay motels, dingy, likely unsafe, and financially unsustainable beyond a week with my income. In a moment of desperation, I even searched how to live in your car with a child. The results were a bleak manual on parking lot safety, gym memberships for showers, and where to find free meals. It was a life I couldn't impose on Lily. I wouldn't. As the afternoon wore on, the initial panic hardened into a gritty resolve. A shelter was a last resort, but it was a roof. I printed out directions to the Family Promise Center downtown, a shelter that took families. My hand shook as I held the paper. This was my plan. This was what my family's decision had wrought. I looked at the time. I had to get Lily. I shoved the printouts in my bag, a tangible symbol of my new reality. The library's children's section was warm and bright, a stark contrast to the cold future awaiting us. Lily was sitting with a group of kids, listening to a volunteer read a story about a brave little owl. Her face lit up when she saw me. She ran over, clutching a picture she had colored. "Mommy, look! It's a house for you and me. It has a purple roof." I took the crayon drawing. It was a lopsided square with a triangle roof, 2 stick figures holding hands, and a huge, smiling sun. The lump in my throat threatened to choke me. "It's beautiful, baby. The most beautiful house I've ever seen." I thanked Miss Jenny, pressing the cash in her hand. She gave me a searching look. "Everything all right, Joey? You seem tired?" "Just a long day," I said, the understatement of the century. "Thank you so much for keeping her." Back in the car, Lily chattered about her day. I half listened, my mind a maze of logistics. Where would we sleep tonight? In the basement, I supposed. In the bed that was no longer ours. In the house where we were no longer welcome. The humiliation was a taste of ash in my mouth. "Are we going home to Grandma's?" Lily asked as I turned onto familiar streets. "Yes, sweetie," I said. The word home tasted foreign. For now. We pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same. Neat, quiet, implacable. My father's car was gone, probably golfing. My mother's was in the garage. I took a deep, shuddering breath, preparing to navigate the icy atmosphere inside. "Lily," I said, turning off the engine, "how about you plan the backyard for a little bit? I need to talk to Grandma about some boring grown-up stuff." "Okay, can I take my chalk?" "Of course." I helped her out, grabbed her bucket of sidewalk chalk from the back seat, and led her to the fenced backyard. "I'll be right inside. You stay in the yard, okay? Don't go out the gate." "I won't, Mommy." She immediately knelt on the patio and began drawing a sprawling rainbow. I watched her for a moment, my heart a fragile, aching thing in my chest. Then I squared my shoulders and walked back into the house. My mother was in the living room, knitting. The click-clack of the needles was the only sound. "Mom," I said, my voice flat, "we need to talk about this." She didn't look up. "The decision is made, Chloe. Talking won't change it. You're throwing your granddaughter on the street. We're giving you the motivation you clearly need," she corrected, her eyes still on her yarn. "You've been complacent. This is the push." "A push? This isn't a push, it's a shove off a cliff."
I'm her mother. Does that mean nothing to you? Finally, she looked at me. Her eyes were like flint. It means everything, which is why I'm so disappointed in the example you're setting for her. Dependence, excuses. We won't enable it anymore. The cruelty of it, wrapped in the language of tough love, stole my breath. I had no more words. I turned and walked back to the kitchen, needing water, needing a moment to collect the shattered pieces of myself. I was at the sink, glass in hand, staring out the window at Lily drawing her rainbows, when I heard the front door open and close. Then I heard the deadbolt turn. A cold trickle of dread, sharper than anything before, dripped down my spine. I walked quickly to the front door. It was locked. I tried the handle. It didn't budge. "Mom?" I called, my voice tight. No answer. I went to the living room. It was empty. Her knitting lay abandoned on the sofa. I checked the garage. Her car was gone. She had left. And she had locked me out of the house. A frantic energy seized me. I ran to the back door. Locked. Every door was locked. I rattled the handle of the sliding glass door to the patio. Locked. "Lily!" I shouted, pounding on the glass. She looked up from her chalk drawing, her smile fading at the side of my face. I motioned frantically for her to come to the door. She trotted over. "Open the door, honey. Try to turn the thing." I pointed at the latch. She stood on her tiptoes, her small fingers fumbling with the lock. It was stiff, a lock she had never operated. She strained, her face scrunched in effort, but she couldn't get it to turn. "It's too hard, Mommy." Panic, pure and undiluted, flooded my veins. My mother had not only decided I didn't live here, she had physically exiled me. And in doing so, she had left my 4-year-old daughter alone outside, separated from me by a pane of glass. The backyard was fenced, but it wasn't secure. The gate latch was low. What if she wandered out? What if someone saw her alone? The afternoon was waning. The sun was dipping lower. "It's okay, baby," I called, forcing calm into my voice. "It's okay. Just stay right there. Don't move. Mommy is going to get the door open." I ran to the side of the house, looking for a spare key. The fake rock was gone. Of course it was. I checked under the mat. Nothing. My parents had orchestrated this. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. I called my mother. It went straight to voicemail. I called my father. Voicemail. I called my brother. He answered on the third ring. "Chloe." "Mark! Mom locked me out of the house. Lily is locked in the backyard alone. I can't get to her. You have to come let me in or tell me where a key is." A pause. A horrible, complicit pause. Mom said she was going out. She said you were being dramatic and needed to cool off. She said you could get in through the back. The back is locked. All the doors are locked. Mark, she is 4. She's out there by herself. Another pause. I could hear the conflict in his breathing, but when he spoke, his voice was firm, parroting our mother's line. "This is exactly the kind of situation you need to learn to handle, Chloe. You're the parent. Figure it out." The call disconnected. I stood there, phone in hand, the world tilting on its axis. My family had not only abandoned me, they had engineered a crisis to prove their point. They were testing me, and my daughter was the unwitting subject. A white-hot rage, more powerful than the fear, exploded in my chest. It burned away the helplessness, the self-pity. Figure it out. I looked at the sliding glass door. The lock was flimsy, an old mechanism. I scanned the patio. Lily's eyes were huge, watching me through the glass. "Stand back, Lily. Way back to your chalk," I yelled. She scurried back to her rainbow. I picked up a heavy decorative clay pot from beside the patio steps. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I hefted it and swung it hard at the corner of the glass door, right next to the lock. The sound was terrifying, a huge crashing boom that sent a spiderweb of cracks radiating across the pane. It didn't shatter inward. I hit it again, harder. This time, the glass gave way with an ear-pleasing crash, falling in a dangerous curtain of shards onto the indoor carpet. I didn't care about the damage. I didn't care about the consequences. I kicked away the largest pieces from the frame, wrapped my hand in my jacket, and cleared a space big enough to climb through. "Stay there, Lily. Don't come close." I climbed through the jagged opening, glass crunching under my shoes. I was in. I ran across the living room, unlocked the front door, and then ran back through the house to the back door from the inside and unlocked it properly. I threw it open and ran to Lily, scooping her up and holding her so tight she squeaked. She was safe. She was in my arms. I was shaking, adrenaline making my teeth chatter. "You broke the door, Mommy," she whispered, staring at the destruction. "I did, baby. I had to get to you." I carried her inside, away from the glass, and set her down in the intact kitchen. "Don't move. Not one step." I grabbed a trash bag and a broom from the basement and began frantically sweeping up the glass, my mind racing ahead. This changed everything. I had just committed vandalism against my parents' property. There would be no end of the week. My stay was over, effective immediately. But I had gotten to my daughter. That was all that mattered. As I swept, the reality crystallized. We couldn't stay here a minute longer. We would leave tonight. Now. With what? Our clothes? Our toiletries? Lily's favorite stuffed bunny. Everything else was just stuff. I finished containing the worst of the glass, my movements mechanical. I went upstairs to my parents' bedroom. In my father's top drawer, where he kept important papers, I found what I was looking for, the spare set of car keys. I took them. It was theft. I didn't care. My Honda was on the last legs. Their Toyota Camry was reliable. They had my daughter locked outside. They owed me this. I went back to the basement, our basement, and pulled out our suitcases. I packed like a woman possessed, throwing in essentials, photos, documents. Lily watched silently from the top of the stairs, her thumb in her mouth, a habit she had broken a year before. Within 45 minutes, we were packed. I loaded our bags into the trunk of the Camry. I installed Lily's car seat in the back. I took a last look at the house with the shattered patio door, a gaping wound in its side. I had no idea where we were going. The shelter address was in my bag. It was a destination. It was a roof. I buckled Lily in and got behind the wheel of my parents' car. The engine purred to life, a smooth, confident sound my car never made. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Lily asked, her voice small, in the twilight. I looked at her in the rearview mirror, her face pale in the twilight. I thought of her drawing, the house with the purple roof. I thought of the shelter printout. I thought of my family's cold collective verdict. And I knew I could never, ever let her feel the way I felt in that moment. Unwanted, disposable, alone. "We're going to find our own house, Lilybug," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It might not have a purple roof right away. It might be small, but it will be ours. And no one will ever decide we don't get to live there." I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, away from the house that was no longer a home, leaving the pieces of my old life broken on the patio behind me. The road ahead was dark and unknown, but for the first time in a long time, I was in the driver's seat.
The Toyota Camry ate up the miles on the darkening highway, its smooth ride a surreal contrast to the chaos churning inside me. In the back seat, Lily fell asleep within 20 minutes, exhausted by the unspoken tension of the day, her head lolling against the car seat. The gentle glow of the dashboard lights was the only illumination in my new world, a world that now consisted of this stolen car, my sleeping child, 2 suitcases, and the address of a family shelter burning a hole in my mind. I drove without a destination for a while, just putting distance between us and the house with the shattered door. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my mind was a war zone. The image of Lily, small and confused on the other side of the glass, played on a loop, interspersed with my mother's placid face delivering her verdict. Each memory fueled the engine of my resolve just as much as the gasoline fueled the car. I couldn't go to the shelter yet. It was too early, and I needed to think. I needed a plan that was more than just a reaction. I pulled into the brightly lit parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket. It was a neutral, anonymous space. I parked far from the entrance, under a lamppost, and finally let the shaking start. It began in my hands, then traveled at my arms until my whole body was trembling. I gripped the steering wheel, clenched my teeth,
and rode the wave of delayed shock. I had broken a door. I had stolen a car. I, Chloe Elizabeth Miller, rule follower, library assistant, had become a criminal in the span of an hour. But I had gotten to my daughter. That single thought was my anchor. I repeated it like a mantra until the shaking subsided. I got to my daughter. I looked at the sleeping, trusting face in the rearview mirror. She was my responsibility, my only real family, and I had to act like it. First, practicalities. I rummaged in my bag for my wallet. I had $87 in cash, a debit card with maybe $300 in my checking account, and a maxed out credit card. My phone battery was at 40%. I had our birth certificates, social security cards, and my divorce papers in the suitcase, a habit born of constant uncertainty during the divorce. We had the clothes on our backs and a few more in the bags, and we had a reliable car with a full tank of gas. For now, it was enough. The shelter was the logical next step, but a deep, primal resistance welled up inside me. Walking through those doors would be the ultimate admission of defeat. It would be proof from my family that I couldn't figure it out. More importantly, it would uproot Lily from the only stability she had left, me, and plant her in a world of shared dormitories, institutional routines, and the palpable despair of others. She'd just been locked out of her home. I couldn't lock her into a system on the same night. There had to be another way, a bridge between the car and an apartment. I needed time. A week? Maybe 2. Time to work more hours, to secure a tiny deposit. An idea, fragile and desperate, began to form. I opened my phone's browser, my fingers cold against the screen. I searched for weekly rate motels near the interstate. The results were a parade of grim, low-slung buildings with names like Starlight Inn and Roadside Retreat. I called the first 3. The weekly rates were staggering, nearly my entire monthly income. The fourth one, the Wayfarer, had a slightly lower rate. The voice on the phone was bored, not unkind. Yeah, we got weekly. Pay in advance, no refunds. Kitchenette's extra $10 a week. A kitchenette? That meant I could save money on food. Is it safe? The question felt stupid as soon as I asked it. The man on the phone gave a short laugh. Lady, it's a roof. We don't guarantee nothing else. You want it or not? I calculated frantically. A week at the Wayfarer would clean out my cash and most of my checking account. It would be a Hail Mary, buying me 7 days to find a miracle. But it was a private roof, a door I could lock from the inside. I want it. I'll be there in an hour. I entered the address into the GPS. It was 40 miles away in a town I'd never heard of. Good. Distance was good. As I drove, I made more calls. I called the library and left a message for my manager, Janette, saying a family emergency required me to take the rest of the week off. My voice only cracked a little. I called the diner, where I occasionally picked up weekend waitressing shifts, and begged for as many hours as they could give me, starting the next day. The manager, a gruff but fair woman named Bev, heard the desperation in my voice. Can you work the lunch shift tomorrow, 11 to 4? Yes, absolutely. All right, be here on time. And Chloe, you okay? I will be. And I hoped it wasn't a lie. The Wayfarer Motel was exactly as advertised. A long L-shaped building, painted a faded aqua, lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. The office was a small, glass-windowed box. The man inside matched his voice. Weary, in his 60s, with kind eyes that had seen too much. His name tag read, Lou. He took my cash with no questions, sliding a key across the counter attached to a large green plastic diamond. Room 22. Around back. And units quieter. Rules are on the door. Break 'em, you're out. Thank you. He gave me a long look. You got a kid? My heart jumped. Yes. He nodded slowly, then reached under the counter and pulled out a small, worn teddy bear. For her. Quiet hours start at 10. Trash pickup is Monday. The unexpected kindness almost undid me. I took the bear, my throat tight. Thank you, Lou. Room 22 smelled of industrial cleaner and old cigarettes. The bedspread was a garish floral pattern, thin and scratchy, but it had a door, a deadbolt, and a window that looked out onto a scruffy pine tree instead of the parking lot. It was a cave, but it was our cave. I carried Lily inside, still asleep, and laid her on the bed. She stirred, mumbled, "Mommy," and curled around the old teddy bear Lou had given her. I unpacked the essentials, made a mental list of what we needed. Groceries, milk, cereal, bread, peanut butter. The basics. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching Lily sleep in the unfamiliar yellowish light. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a profound, bone-aching exhaustion, and a solitude so vast it felt like a physical presence in the room. I was now a single mother, officially homeless, living in a weekly motel with stolen property in the parking lot. I had hit a new low I didn't know existed. But beneath the exhaustion, a tiny, stubborn spark was alive. It was the spark that had swung the flower pot. It was the spark that made me call Bev for shifts. It was the spark that looked at this dismal room and thought, temporary. This is temporary. My phone buzzed. A string of texts lit up the screen. Mom, the police have been called about the vandalism and the stolen vehicle. Return the car immediately, and we will reconsider pressing charges. This is your last chance to act like a responsible adult. Dad. Chloe, this has gone too far. Bring the car back. Let's talk. Mark. You're proving their point, you know. Dramatic and irrational. Bring the car back before you ruin your life. A cold numbness spread through me. They hadn't called to check if Lily was okay. They hadn't asked where we were. They had called the police. The finality of it was breathtaking. Any lingering fantasy that this was a cruel test, that they would relent, evaporated. This was war, and they had drawn the battle lines around a Toyota Camry and a broken door. I didn't reply. Instead, I did the only thing I could think to do. I opened my laptop and started writing. I wrote to the only person who might, however reluctantly, be on my side. I wrote to David. David, I'm not writing for sympathy or a fight. I'm writing to inform you that Lily and I are in a crisis. As of today, we have no stable housing. We are safe for the moment, but the situation is precarious. I am working as much as I can. Your child support, when it arrives, is essential. I am asking you to ensure the payments are made consistently and on time for the foreseeable future. I am also asking, as Lily's father, if you have any resources or contacts in this state that could help with securing low-income housing. A name, a website, anything. This is not my failure to plan. This is the result of being formally ejected from our temporary housing with no notice. My family has chosen to involve the police over property damage rather than ensure their granddaughter's safety. We are on our own. Lily is healthy and brave. She asks about you sometimes. I tell her you love her. Chloe. It was clinical, stripped of emotion, a status report from the front lines. I hit send before I could overthink it. I didn't expect a knight in shining armor. I expected nothing, but I had to try every avenue. The next week was a brutal lesson in survival arithmetic. I worked the lunch shift at the diner, smiling through the fatigue, my feet screaming in the cheap shoes I'd packed. The other waitresses, a tough, kind crew, covered for me when I zoned out for a second too long. Bev slid me a to-go box of leftovers at the end of every shift. She'd grunt. For the kid. After my shift, I'd pick up Lily from the motel room. I'd found a cheap, wary older unit in the next unit who watched her for a few dollars an hour, and we'd go to the library. While Lily played in the children's section, I used the computers to apply for jobs. Full-time jobs, with benefits. Admin assistant, receptionist, data entry, anything, stable. I applied for every form of assistance.
The second miracle was smaller, but seismic. David wrote back, Chloe, got your email. That's fucked up about your family. I didn't know things were that bad. Lily shouldn't be in a motel. I set up an automatic payment for the child support. It'll come on the 1st. It's not much, but it'll be regular.
I don't know about housing there, but my cousin's wife is a social worker in the next county over. Her name is Maria. Her email is maria.hernandez@countyservices.gov. Tell her I referred you. She might know about programs. Tell Lily I said hi. David. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't love. But it was responsibility and a thread of connection. It was more than I had from anyone else. I cried when I read it, silent tears of relief for the automatic payment and of grief for the normal life where co-parenting meant more than an emailed referral. I wrote to Maria that night, laying out her situation with bullet point clarity. She replied the next morning with a list of 3 nonprofit agencies that specialized in rapid rehousing for working families, and a name to mention at each. Quote, "They have funding that doesn't always show up on the public websites," she wrote. "Be persistent." End quote. The interview at the property management company was in a clean, bland office park. I wore the best outfit I had in my suitcase, black pants and a simple blue blouse. I talked about my library experience as customer service and meticulous organizational skills. I talked about my desire for stability. I must have sounded as desperate as I felt because the woman interviewing me, a sharp-eyed manager named Susan, leaned forward. This job is often the first point of contact for people in crisis, evictions, repairs, emergencies. It requires immense patience and compassion, even when you're not feeling it. Can you handle that? I thought of Lou at the motel, of Bev at the diner, of Maria, the social worker I'd never met. I thought of the compassion I'd been shown and the brutal lack of it from my own blood. I understand crisis, I said, my voice steady. And I understand that a little compassion in a hard moment can change everything. I can handle it. She offered me the job on the spot. It started in 2 weeks. That afternoon, fueled by a hope so fragile it felt like holding a soap bubble, I called the first agency on Maria's list. I told my story, minus the criminal damage and auto theft. I emphasized the new job, the child support, and the motel address. The woman on the phone listened. She said, "We have a program, slowly. It's a bridge deposit assistance. If you have income and a job offer, we can cover the security deposit and first month of rent on a qualifying apartment. You'd have to find the apartment yourself, and it has to be under a certain rent threshold." It was the bridge, the exact bridge I needed. The next 5 days were a whirlwind of apartment hunting in a price range that was depressingly low. I saw places with crumbling stairs, with windows that didn't close, with the smell of mold and despair. I began to lose hope again. Then I saw it. A small "For Rent" sign in the window of a duplex on a quiet tree-lined street. The house was old but tidy, with a small fenced yard. The rent was at the very top of my allowed threshold. With trembling hands, I called the number. The landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Peterson, agreed to show it to me right then. The apartment was the downstairs unit of the duplex. It had 2 small bedrooms, a living room with a sunny window, a clean if outdated kitchen, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. It was small. It was perfect. The back door opened onto the little yard. "It's available immediately," Mr. Peterson said, watching Lily peek into the smaller bedroom. "Quiet street, good for a little one." I want it," I blurted out. "I have a job starting in 2 weeks. I have a deposit assistance program that will cover the first month and security deposit. I can pay the second month of rent myself." He looked at me, at my clearly secondhand clothes, at the hope and terror warring on my face. He didn't ask for references. He didn't ask about my previous address. "The program. They send the check directly to me." "Yes, sir." He nodded slowly. "All right. Let's get the paperwork started." 2 weeks later, the day before my new job started, We moved in. Our possessions barely filled the small rooms. We had a blow-up mattress, a kitchen table, and 2 chairs bought from a thrift store, and our suitcases. But we had a home, a legal, safe, permanent-ish home with a door that had a key that was ours. The day we got the keys, Lily and I stood in the empty living room. Sunlight streamed in. "Is this our adventure house, Mommy?" she whispered, as if speaking too loud might break the spell. "This is it, Lilybug." I kneeled and pulled a can of spray paint from my bag. It was purple. Remember the purple roof? Her eyes went wide. We went outside. Our unit's front door was sheltered by a small, sloping wooden overhang. Not quite a roof, but a canopy. Holding my breath, I shook the can and sprayed a wide, vibrant stripe of purple across the weathered wood. Lily clapped her hands, laughing. Our purple roof! It was vandalism again, technically. But what our vandalism? Our mark, our claim. That night, as Lily slept in her own room for the first time in months, I sat on the floor of the living room and finally opened the letter that had arrived at the motel, forwarded by a wary Lou. It was from my parents' lawyer. It formally demanded repayment for the patio door and the, quote, unauthorized use of the vehicle, end quote, and threatened civil action if I did not comply. Enclosed was a bill for $3,850. I didn't feel anger this time. I felt a distant, cold pity. They were still speaking the only language they knew, the language of debts and damages. They had no idea that their daughter had fought a dragon and won a tiny sunlit kingdom with a purple door, that the currency that mattered here was courage, not cash. I put the letter in a drawer. I would deal with it, in time, on my terms. 6 months later, the duplex feels like home. My job is stressful but stable. The health insurance means Lily's checkups don't send me into a panic. We have a sofa now, and bookshelves made of cinder blocks and planks. We have a routine. We have peace. My family has not called. The legal threat seems to have stalled. They are a ghost limb. Sometimes I feel a phantom ache for what was, but the limb itself is gone. One Saturday, we are at the park again, the same one where this journey began in earnest. Lily is on the swings, pumping her legs high, her laughter ringing out. I sit on a bench, not with the crushing weight of terror, but with the quiet fatigue of a long week well lived. An older woman sits down on the other end of the bench. We nod politely. She watches Lily for a moment. "She's a joyful one," the woman remarks. "She is," I say, pride warming my voice. "It's a good thing," the woman says, almost to herself. "Joy is a kind of fuel. It gets you through the hard roads." I look at her, wondering what hard road she has traveled. "Yes," I agree softly. "It really is." Lily jumps off the swing at its highest arc, landing in a heap in the wood chips, then popping up with a grin. She runs to me, breathless. "Did you see me fly, Mommy?" I pull her onto my lap, smelling sunshine and little girl sweat. "I saw you. You flew so high." She wraps her arms around my neck. "I love our house with the purple roof." "Me too, baby." I hold her, watching the sun dapple through the leaves of the oak tree above us. The road here was harder and darker than I could have imagined. It was paved with betrayal, fear, and broken glass. But we drove it. We built a new map from the fragments. My mother was wrong. I did live somewhere. I lived here. In this moment, in this joy, in this tiny, resilient, purple-roofed kingdom we built with our own 2 hands. And no one would ever decide otherwise again.